Welcome to the MDedge Daily News for Monday, July 9th. I'm Nick Andrews. Today, new research on migraines and menopause. The FDA recommends pooled testing for Zika blood donations, and new developments have slowed the use of implantable cardioverter defibrillators. But we begin with myth-busting migraines from Family Practice News. Half of patients with migraines suspect that chocolate can trigger their migraine attacks, but those patients are mistaken. The chocolate trigger was not the only myth recently debunked. According to prospective research from 774 patients, the other widely accepted triggers, neck pain and tension, and dietary nitrate intake, are also untrue. Dr. Stephen Donahue presented this research at the annual meeting of the American Headache Society. In the research, the patients were registered to N1 Headache, which is a sophisticated proprietary digital headache diary. N1 Headache tackled the key issue of what proportion of individuals who suspected a given trigger actually showed a statistically significant association prospectively between an individual's day-to-day variations in experiencing that trigger and their headache risk. In individually determined correlations, chocolate was associated with migraine attacks in only 1.3% of patients who suspected that it was a trigger. In fact, chocolate was actually associated with a decreased risk in about 4% of patients who thought that it was a trigger. 80% of patients thought that neck pain or tension was a trigger, but only 32% of patients showed an association. And 45% of patients suspected that nitrate intake was a trigger, but only 2% of patients had a significant association between nitrate intake and migraines, while about 1% experienced a significantly decreased association. You can read more about migraine trigger myths at MDedge.com. And what can women with migraine expect during the menopausal transition? Well, about 60% will experience a change in their headache pattern, and for 60% of that group, it's a change for the worse. This is according to research presented at the annual meeting of the American Headache Society in San Francisco. The longitudinal study included 60 women with pre-existing history of migraine who followed through the menopausal transition. Of the 35 women who experienced a change in their migraine attacks in association with menopause, the change occurred perimenopausally or postmenopausally in 84% of cases. During the presentation, several female headache specialists in the audience rose to thank Dr. Yu-Chen Chang for shining new light on a major understudied issue with far-reaching quality of life implications. Dr. Chang is a neurologist and a postdoctoral fellow at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. Dr. Chang says that hormone replacement therapy was used by about 2/3 of women whose migraines remained stable and a similar proportion of those whose headaches changed. The FDA has released revised guidance regarding testing blood donations for Zika virus. The change signals that the administration is moving away from individual testing of donations and toward pooled testing. The revision replaces recommendations made in 2016 that had advised individual testing for all whole blood and blood component donations using a nucleic acid test. These new recommendations reflect the decreasing number of cases of Zika virus infection in the U.S. and its territories, as well as advice from the agency's Blood Products Advisory Committee. There is one exception. Donations from areas where a positive donation has been detected or in which the risk of mosquito-borne transmission of Zika virus is high should be tested individually. The guidance also allows the use of an FDA-approved pathogen reduction device for plasma and certain platelet products. And finally, today, a whistleblower and a federal lawsuit have led to substantially lower use of implantable cardioverter defibrillators. In 2005, an update in Medicare reimbursement policy had a modest effect on the use of ICDs, with a significant drop from 2007 to 2009. From 2010 to 2011, after the Department of Justice suit became public knowledge, the declines were significantly greater. The government launched the suit in 2010 after a whistleblower used Medicare data to allege that many hospitals weren't waiting the appropriate amount of time to implant the IDC devices after a heart attack or coronary revascularization. This is according to a report published in JAMA by Dr. Nihar Desai of Yale University. These procedures would have been against the 2005 Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services National Coverage Determination, which required delaying implantation for 40 days after a heart attack and 90 days after revascularization. Just 1 year after the suit was filed, an independent investigator concluded that over 22% of the ICDs implanted between 2006 and 2009 for primary prevention were not evidence-based. Researchers compared changes in the proportion of IDC implantations at hospitals that eventually settled the suit with hospitals who did not. After the steeper drops in 2010 and 2011, the number of procedures leveled off. From July 2011 to July 2015, the proportions of ICDs not meeting the criteria were similar and stable in both settlement groups. Despite the changes, there was variation among hospitals. More than 14% of the primary prevention ICDs did not meet criteria at some of the worst performing hospitals. Dr. Desai says that the analyses of secondary prevention ICDs do not suggest that access to necessary procedures was negatively affected by the investigation. And that concludes this edition of the MDedge Daily News for a Monday. You can find links to these stories in the podcast description. And don't forget the MDedge Psychcast comes out on Wednesday. The Cardio Cast is available on Friday. You can subscribe to this and all of our podcasts wherever podcasts are found. For MDedge, I'm Nick Andrews.